The mist settled over Crescent City Park that autumn evening like a predator's breath, cold and patient. The leaves had turned weeks ago, rust and amber carpeting the pathways where joggers once ran in daylight hours. Now, with dusk falling early and the air biting sharp, the park belonged to shadows and the things that moved through them unseen. Along the winding path near the dried fountain where children no longer played, two figures walked in silence. Damon Blackwood did not stroll. He prowled, each step deliberate, his tall frame wrapped in a black wool coat that made him look less like a man taking his son for a walk and more like a king surveying territory he owned. And in truth, he did own it. Every street, every building, every soul that called this city home, though they would never know it. His hands were buried in his pockets, jaw set, silver eyes scanning the darkening park with the restless awareness of something wild caged in human skin. Beside him, small and bright as a spark in all that darkness, was Leo. 6 years old, bundled in a red jacket with wolf ears sewn onto the hood, clutching a half-eaten pretzel in one mittened hand. He hummed a tune off-key, skipping every third step, utterly unbothered by the tension that rolled off his father like thunder before a storm. Damon had not wanted to come here. He had not wanted to leave the estate, to walk among humans with their fragile necks and oblivious smiles. But Leo had asked, and Damon had learned long ago that denying his son anything was a battle he would lose. Still, he hated it. The park. The memories. The ghosts that lingered here. This was where she had died. Not here exactly, not this bench, not this path, but close enough that every time the wind shifted, Damon's wolf surged to the surface, snarling at a threat 5 years cold. His late wife had been gentle, human, and completely unaware of what he was until the night a rival pack tore her apart to punish him for his power. He had destroyed them all for it, every last one, burned their territory to ash and salted the earth. But it did not bring her back. He had sworn, kneeling in her blood, that he would never let another human close. Never risk it. Never feel it. And he had kept that vow. Until tonight. Daddy, look. Leo's voice pulled him back. Damon followed his son's gaze to a bench near the empty fountain, half hidden in the creeping fog. A woman sat there, alone. She wore a thin coat, pale blue and threadbare at the cuffs, her arms wrapped around herself as though trying to hold her own pieces together. Her dark hair fell in waves around her face, and even from this distance, Damon could see the way her shoulders shook. Not from the cold. She was crying. Softly, silently, the kind of crying that came from someone who had learned that no one was listening anyway. Damon's wolf stirred, curious. Weak, it whispered. Pray. He looked away. Leo, we're going home. But Daddy. Now. Leo did not move. He stood there, staring at the woman with those wide amber eyes that saw too much, felt too much. His mother's eyes. She's sad, Leo whispered. That's not our concern. But, Leo. The command in Damon's voice was absolute, the kind that made grown men drop their eyes and bare their throats. But Leo only frowned, his small face scrunching up in that stubborn way that meant he was about to do something reckless. Don't cry, ma'am. Leo's voice rang clear across the park as he pulled free from his father's side and ran toward the bench, his little red jacket bouncing with each step. You can borrow my dad. The words hit Damon like a silver bullet to the chest. He moved on instinct, faster than any human should, closing the distance in 3 strides, reaching for Leo's shoulder to pull him back, to stop this, to leave before. His hand brushed the woman's as she looked up. And the world caught fire. The mate bond snapped into place with the force of an avalanche, a searing, undeniable pull that roared through Damon's veins and lit every nerve ending ablaze. His wolf lunged forward with a savage, possessive snarl. Mine. Ours. Claim. Protect. Keep. Damon froze. The woman stared up at him with wide, red-rimmed eyes the color of warm earth, and for a moment, neither of them breathed. She looked fragile, breakable, human in every way that terrified him, and his wolf did not care. It wanted her. Needed her. Would burn the world down to keep her. I'm sorry, she stammered, her voice hoarse from crying. Your son is very sweet, but I'm fine really, You're not fine, Damon heard himself say, his voice rough, low, edged with something he could not control. His hand was still on hers, and he could feel her pulse racing beneath his fingers, could smell the salt of her tears, and beneath it, something sweeter, vanilla honey fear. She tried to pull away. He let her, but only barely, his fingers curling into a fist to stop himself from reaching for her again. "I'm Damon Blackwood," he said, because he needed her to know, needed her to understand what was happening even if she could not possibly comprehend it. "This is my son, Leo." Leo beamed up at her, completely oblivious to the way his father's entire world had just shattered and reformed around this stranger. "You looked sad, so I thought you could borrow him. He's really good at fixing things." The woman blinked, a confused, watery laugh escaping her. That's very kind, but where do you live?" Damon interrupted, his voice sharper than he intended. She flinched. I don't think that's. Do you have somewhere to sleep tonight?" Her silence was answer enough. Damon's jaw tightened. His wolf was howling now, raking claws against the inside of his ribs, demanding he take her, protect her, remove her from this cold, exposed place where anything could hurt her. The rational part of him, the part that remembered grief and blood and vows, screamed to walk away. But he could not. He would not. "Come with us," he said, and it was not a request. Clara Vance had learned to recognize danger. It had a particular smell, sweat and alcohol and rage, and it wore her ex-boyfriend's face when he came home after losing another job. It sounded like her landlord's knock at 2 a.m, demanding rent she did not have. It looked like the eviction notice taped to her door that morning, stark white paper against peeling paint. But this man, this Damon Blackwood with his expensive coat and his eyes like winter storms, was a different kind of danger altogether. The kind that did not announce itself with fists or threats. The kind that simply was, inevitable as gravity. "I can't," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't even know you." "You don't have to." His tone left no room for argument, but something in his expression softened when Leo tugged at his sleeve. "Please, Daddy. She's cold." Damon's jaw worked, some internal war playing out behind those unsettling eyes. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out his phone, his movements sharp, controlled. "What's your landlord's name?" Clara blinked. What? Why would? His name. There was steel beneath the question, something that made her answer before she could think better of it. "Marcus Verne." "But I don't see what." Damon was already dialing. He turned slightly, phone to his ear, and Clara watched as his entire demeanor shifted. Where before he had been tense, controlled, now he became something else entirely. Calm. Cold. Lethal. "Mr. Verne. Damon Blackwood." A pause. Clara could hear the tinny voice on the other end shift from irritation to something like fear. "Yes, that Blackwood. I understand you're evicting a tenant. Clara Vance." Another pause. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to forget about that eviction. You're going to return her security deposit with interest. And you're going to pray I never hear about you harassing vulnerable women again." The voice on the other end sputtered something. Damon's smile was a predator's grin, all teeth and no warmth. "I'm glad we understand each other." He ended the call and turned back to Clara, who sat frozen on the bench, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. "That's handled. Now, you're coming home with us." I can't just." "You can." He crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level, and the intensity in his gaze pinned her in place. "You have nowhere to go tonight. You're cold, you're hungry, and you're exhausted. My home has more rooms than I know what to do with. My son has decided you need help, and when Leo decides something, the universe tends to bend around him." A muscle in his jaw ticked. "One hot meal. One safe place to sleep. That's all I'm offering." Liar, something in Clara's gut whispered. This man was offering far more than that, whether he knew it or not. Leo took her hand, his small fingers warm even through his mitten. "We have hot chocolate," he said solemnly, as if this settled everything. And perhaps it did. Because Clara found herself nodding, found herself standing, found herself following this stranger and his strange, kind son toward a black car that waited at the park's edge like a shadow come to life. She told herself it was just for tonight. Just one meal, one warm bed, one moment of breathing without the weight of the world crushing her chest. She told herself she would leave in the morning. But as Damon's hand settled at the small of her back, guiding her toward the car with a possessiveness that should have terrified her, Clara felt the future shift beneath her feet like ice beginning to crack. The Blackwood estate rose from the hillside like something out of a Gothic fairy tale, all iron gates and stone walls and windows that gleamed like watchful eyes in the darkness. Clara pressed her face to the car window as they wound up the private drive, her breath fogging the glass. She had seen houses like this before, but only in movies, only in the kind of stories where girls like her did not belong. The car stopped before marble steps that led to doors tall enough for giants. Clara's stomach twisted. This was a mistake. She should have stayed in the park, should have figured something else out, should have. Come on. Leo was already out of the car, bouncing on his toes, his hand reaching for hers. Wait till you see my room. I have a castle bed. She let him pull her forward because turning back felt impossible now, and because his excitement was the only warm thing in the cold November air. Damon walked ahead, silent, his phone already pressed to his ear as he issued quiet commands to someone on the other end. The doors swung open before they reached them, and Clara found herself stepping into a world of polished marble and crystal chandeliers. And men. So many men. They stood at intervals throughout the entrance hall, all of them tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black. Security, she assumed, though there was something off about them. The way they moved, too fluid, too aware. The way their eyes tracked her as she passed, not with ordinary curiosity but with something sharper, hungrier. One of them, a man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, inhaled deeply as she walked by, and his expression shifted into something between confusion and alarm. Clara's skin prickled. She moved closer to Leo instinctively, her hand tightening around his. Marcus, have the guest suite prepared. East Wing. Damon's voice cut through the space like a blade. And spread the word. No one approaches her without my express permission. No one speaks to her. No one even looks at her too long. Are we clear? The scarred man, Marcus, nodded sharply. Yes, Alpha. Alpha? Clara's mind snagged on the word, but before she could question it, Leo was tugging her toward a grand staircase. I'll show you, he announced. You can see my room first, and then we'll have hot chocolate, and then, oh, do you like stories? Daddy doesn't read them right. He does all the voices the same. Clara let herself be pulled along, grateful for the distraction, for Leo's chatter that filled the cavernous silence. His room was exactly as promised. A bed shaped like a castle, toys scattered across plush carpet, drawings taped to walls that were painted the color of summer sky. It was a child's paradise, but there was something lonely about it too, something too neat, too untouched. Do you know the brave little wolf? Leo asked, shoving a book into her hands. His eyes were wide, hopeful, desperate in a way that made Clara's chest ache. I don't think so. Will you teach me? His smile could have lit the whole estate. She sat on the floor beside his castle bed, and Leo climbed into her lap as naturally as breathing, as if he had been waiting his whole life for someone to hold him like this. Clara's arms came around him automatically, and she began to read, stumbling over the unfamiliar words, making up voices that made Leo giggle. She did not see Damon in the doorway, did not see the way he stood frozen in the shadows, watching them with an expression caught somewhere between agony and wonder. Did not see his hands curl into fists at his sides, or the way his eyes flashed gold in the dim light before he turned and walked away, his wolf howling with a need he refused to name. Damon did not sleep that night. He could not. Every breath he took was saturated with her scent, vanilla and honey and something uniquely, devastatingly Clara. It clung to the air, wound through the ventilation system, invaded every corner of his sanctuary until he wanted to tear the walls down just to escape it. His wolf was worse. It paced beneath his skin, snarling and snapping, demanding he go to her, claim her, mark her so thoroughly that every wolf in the territory would know she belonged to the Alpha King. The bond pulled at him like a fishing line hooked through his sternum, and with every hour that passed, the line drew tighter. By dawn, Damon stood in his study with a glass of bourbon he had not touched, staring at nothing, his control fraying at the edges. This was exactly what he had feared. What he had sworn would never happen again. A human in his world, vulnerable and breakable, a target painted on her back the moment she stepped through his door. He had to send her away. Had to end this before it began, before his enemies caught her scent, before the bond deepened into something irreversible. The decision should have been easy. It was not. He found her in the kitchen 3 hours later, making breakfast with Leo perched on the counter beside her, chattering about wolves and forests and whether pancakes counted as dinner food. She wore the same clothes from yesterday, her hair pulled back in a messy knot, and she was laughing at something Leo said, and the sight of her in his space in his home, making his son smile like that. Damon's wolf surged forward with a possessive snarl. "Mine. We need to talk." His voice came out harder than he intended, and Clara flinched, the spatula in her hand clattering against the pan. "Of course. Let me just. Now." Leo's smile vanished. "Daddy. Go to your room, Leo." "But. Now." The command was absolute, laced with alpha authority that no wolf could disobey. But Leo was only half wolf, and his human stubbornness was all his mother. He crossed his arms, lower lip jutting out. "You're being mean. Leo. You're using your scary voice on Clara." Damon's jaw clenched. "This is not your concern. Go." Clara set down the spatula, her hands trembling slightly. "It's okay, sweetheart. Your dad and I just need to talk grown-up stuff for a minute." "Are you leaving?" Leo's voice cracked, and the naked fear in it was a knife between Damon's ribs. Clara looked at Damon, and he saw the understanding dawn in her eyes. Saw the moment she realized what he was about to do. "Yes," Damon said flatly. "Miss Vance will be leaving this morning. I'll arrange for a car and compensation for her time." "No." Leo launched himself off the counter, crashing into Damon's legs with the full force of his small body. "No, no, no. You can't make her leave. You promised I could keep her." "I promised no such thing." "You said she could stay. You said." Tears streamed down Leo's face, his voice rising to a wail that Damon had not heard since the night his mother died. "I don't want her to go. Everyone always goes. Mom went, and Nanny Beth went, and Nanny Sarah went, and now Clara." "Leo, enough." But Leo was beyond reason now, his small body racked with sobs, his fingers clutching Damon's shirt like a lifeline. "Please, Daddy. Please don't make her go. I'll be good, I promise, I'll be so good, just please." Damon closed his eyes. His wolf was howling in harmony with his son's grief, clawing at him, tearing him apart from the inside. And Clara stood there, her own eyes wet, looking at Leo like her heart was breaking too. He had lost before he even began. "She stays," he heard himself say, his voice rough. "For now. She stays." Clara could not sleep. The guest suite was beautiful, all silk sheets and soft lighting, more luxury than she had ever known. But the stillness pressed against her like a weight, and every creak of the old estate made her wonder what kind of world she had stumbled into. She had seen the way the guards looked at her. Had heard that word, alpha, whispered in tones that suggested something far more than mere respect. And Damon himself, with those eyes that sometimes caught the light wrong, flashing gold like an animal's in the dark. The rational part of her mind said to leave. To slip out in the morning and never look back. But Leo's tear-stained face kept rising in her memory, and beneath the fear, something else stirred. Curiosity. Connection. The terrifying sense that she had been walking through her life asleep until that moment in the park when a little boy offered to lend her his father. She rose, pulling on the robe that had been left for her, and followed the moonlight streaming through the tall windows. The house was silent, empty, though she knew guards still prowled the halls. She found a door that led to the gardens and slipped outside. The night air bit cold against her skin, sharp with the scent of dying leaves and rich earth. The garden sprawled before her, wild despite its manicured paths, as if nature was slowly reclaiming what had been tamed. Stone benches sat beneath ancient oaks, and in the distance, she could see a fountain, its water silver in the moonlight. Clara walked without direction, letting the cold clear her head. She did not hear the footsteps behind her. Did not sense the presence until she reached the fountain's edge and turned. The wolf stood 10 feet away. It was massive, easily the size of a small horse, its fur black as midnight and gleaming in the pale light. Eyes like molten gold fixed on her, unblinking, ancient. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Her body locked in place, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her legs would not obey. The wolf moved closer. One step. Then another. Its paws made no sound on the stone path. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She should scream. Should flee. But something in those eyes held her frozen. Not malice, not hunger, but something else entirely. Recognition, perhaps. Or sorrow. The wolf stopped before her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from its body, could see her own reflection in its eyes. Slowly, impossibly, it lowered its massive head and pressed its muzzle against her trembling hand. The touch was gentle. Almost reverent. Clara's fear shattered like glass. Her fingers, moving of their own accord, sank into the thick fur at the wolf's neck. It was softer than she expected, warm, and beneath her palm she could feel the steady thunder of its heartbeat. The wolf leaned into her touch, a low rumble building in its chest that was not quite a growl, not quite a purr. "You're beautiful," Clara whispered, and she did not know why she said it, only that it was true. The wolf's eyes closed, and for a moment they stood there in the moonlit garden, girl and beast, connected by something neither could name. Then the wolf pulled back, its gaze holding hers for one more breath before it turned and disappeared into the shadows between the trees. Clara stood alone, her hand still warm from the wolf's heat, her heart no longer racing with fear but with something far more dangerous. Wonder. She did not notice Damon watching from his study window, his human form returned, his hand pressed against the glass where her touch still burned on his skin like a brand. Clara found the clothes 3 days later while searching for Leo's lost toy soldier. The door to Damon's study had been open, an invitation or an oversight, and the small wooden figure had rolled beneath the massive oak desk. She knelt to retrieve it and saw them. Shredded fabric scattered across the floor behind the desk, as if someone had torn through expensive clothes with their bare hands, or claws. A shirt, she thought. Maybe pants. The pieces were too small to tell, but the violence of it made her stomach turn. Dark stains marked the hardwood, rust-colored and unmistakable. Blood. Clara stood slowly, the toy soldier clutched in her fist. Her mind raced through explanations, each more ridiculous than the last. An accident. A fight. A dog she had not seen. But there were no dogs here. Only wolves. She backed toward the door and froze. Voices drifted up from the hall below, low and urgent. She recognized Marcus's growl, and beneath it, others she had heard among the guards. Against every instinct that screamed at her to leave, Clara moved toward the sound. The grand staircase curved down to a hole she had not explored, and at its end, light spilled from beneath closed double doors. She crept closer, her heart hammering, and pressed herself against the wall beside the entrance. Can't keep her here, Alpha. The other packs are already asking questions. A human in the king's house. She stays. Damon's voice was cold, absolute. With respect, she's a liability. If the rogues catch wind, then we ensure they don't. A pause. She's mine, Marcus. The bond won't be denied, and I won't send her into the world unprotected. Not when every wolf with a grudge against me will see her as the fastest way to my throat. Silence. Then another voice, younger, uncertain. Alpha, she doesn't even know what you are. What we are. How long can we keep pretending? As long as necessary. Clara's breath caught. The words circled in her mind, refusing to settle into sense. Bond. Packs. Rogues. What you are. The door swung open. Marcus stood in the frame, his nostrils flaring, and his eyes snapped to where she stood. Alpha, we have a problem. Damon appeared behind him, and the moment his gaze found Clara, something shifted in the air. Something dangerous. The other men, 6 of them, all massive, all watchful, filtered out past her with lowered eyes, leaving her alone with Damon in the hallway that suddenly felt too narrow, too dark. Clara. His voice was careful, controlled. How much did you hear? Enough. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. What are you? Go back to your room. No. The word came out stronger than she felt. I deserve to know what I'm staying in. What you are. What those men are. What any of this is. Damon moved forward, and Clara's back hit the wall. He caged her there with his arms on either side of her head, his body a wall of heat and barely contained violence. When he spoke, his voice was a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her bones. You want the truth? His eyes flashed, gold bleeding through silver, and this close she could see the inhuman light in them, the predator lurking beneath the surface. I am not a man, Clara. I am the king. Alpha of the Silver Moon Pack. Ruler of every wolf in this territory. His lips pulled back, and she saw the two sharp canines. I am the monster your fairy tales warned you about. And you, little human, are my fated mate. The world tilted. Clara's knees buckled, and Damon's hands shot out, catching her before she fell, holding her up even as the truth tore her world apart. The whispers spread through the supernatural underground like wildfire. The Alpha King has taken a human mate. The king has gone soft. The king has given his enemies a target wrapped in fragile human skin. Cale heard the rumors in a dive bar 3 territories over, and he smiled into his whiskey. Damon Blackwood, the untouchable king who had slaughtered Cale's father and burned his pack's territory to ash, finally had a weakness. And weaknesses, Cale knew, were meant to be exploited. Clara knew none of this as she stood outside Westridge Academy, waiting for Leo's class to let out. 2 weeks had passed since the revelation, 2 weeks of Damon explaining in careful, measured tones what it meant to be his mate, what dangers lurked in the shadows, why she needed guards everywhere she went. 2 weeks of her world expanding into something both terrifying and impossible to look away from. The guards stood 20 feet back, giving her the illusion of normalcy that she craved. Marcus had argued against it, but Damon had relented. The school was on Pack territory. She was safe here. She was not safe. The man appeared as the children began streaming out, casual in his approach, hands in his pockets, smile easy. He was handsome in a sharp-edged way, dark hair, darker eyes, something predatory in the way he moved that made Clara's instincts scream. Clara Vance. His voice was smooth, familiar, though she had never heard it before. I'm an old friend of Damon's. He asked me to pick you up today. Lie. Every word tasted like a lie. I don't think so. Clara stepped back, her eyes scanning for Marcus, for any of the guards. Where were they? The man's smile widened. Come now. Don't make this difficult. His eyes flashed yellow, and Clara's blood went cold. The king sent me. Though between you and me, I think he's making a mistake. Humans are so terribly breakable. Clara. Leo's voice rang out, and she turned to see him running toward her, backpack bouncing, completely unaware of the danger. Everything happened at once. The man moved, faster than anything human, reaching for Leo. Clara didn't think. She threw herself between them, her body a shield, and felt iron fingers close around her wrist. Pain exploded up her arm. Run, Leo. The words tore from her throat as the man dragged her backward. Run and find Marcus. Now. Leo's face crumpled with terror, but he ran. Smart boy. Brave boy. The man, Cale, she heard him called by others who emerged from the shadows, 3 more of them, all with those wrong eyes, pulled her toward a black van idling at the curb. Clara fought. She kicked, clawed, screamed, every ounce of survival instinct flooding her veins. Her nails raked across Cale's face, drawing blood, and he snarled, the sound inhuman. Feisty. I see why he likes you. Then Marcus was there, crashing into Cale with the force of a freight train. The other guards followed, and suddenly the quiet school pickup lane became a battleground. Parents screamed, pulling children away. Clara scrambled backward, her wrist throbbing, watching as Marcus shifted, his body contorting, bones cracking, until a massive grey wolf stood where the man had been. Cale laughed, the sound manic, delighted. Tell your king I'm coming for what's his. He shifted too, a rust-colored wolf that was all teeth and malice, and then he was gone, his pack fleeing into the tree line beyond the school. Marcus shifted back, his clothes shredded, his eyes wild. Are you hurt? Clara shook her head, though her wrist screamed otherwise. Leo. Safe. He found me. Marcus's jaw clenched. The Alpha needs to know. This was a declaration of war. Clara looked at the blood on her hands, Cale's blood mixed with her own, and felt something cold settle in her chest. She had chosen this world when she stayed. Now that world was choosing to destroy her. The winter solstice ball was a spectacle of old-world elegance and barely concealed savagery. The Blackwood Estate's grand ballroom glittered with crystal and candlelight, filled with wolves dressed in formal where that did nothing to disguise what they were. Clara could see it now, the inhuman grace in their movements, the way their eyes tracked motion, the dominance displays hidden beneath polite conversation. She stood at the edge of the room in a dress Damon had insisted she wear, midnight blue silk that made her feel like an imposter playing at royalty. His hand had been at her back all evening, possessive and constant, until the visiting alphas had cornered him with disputes that required his attention. Politics, Marcus had explained. Pack law. Things that could not be ignored, even for her safety. Stay where I can see you, Damon had commanded, his eyes already flashing gold with the effort of controlling his wolf. The bond between them had deepened over the past weeks, an invisible thread that pulled tighter every day, and leaving her side clearly cost him. Clara had nodded, watching him disappear into the crowd of circling predators, each one seeking favor or testing his strength. She sipped champagne she did not want and tried to ignore the stares. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Marcus's head snapped up, his nostrils flaring. Around the room, other guards stiffened, their casual poses transforming into combat readiness. Clara's pulse quickened. Miss Vance. A woman appeared at her elbow, one of the serving staff. There's an urgent call for you in the East Parlor. Your sister. Clara didn't have a sister. The realization came too late. The woman's grip on her arm was iron, and before Clara could scream, before she could call for help, a cloth pressed over her mouth and nose. Sweet chemical smell. The world blurred. She heard shouting. Felt herself being dragged. Then nothing. When Damon felt the bond snap, it was like a knife severing a vital artery. One moment Clara was there, a bright point of warmth in his awareness. The next, she was gone, fading, distant, wrong. His head whipped around, searching the ballroom. Empty space where she should be. Marcus running toward him, face ashen. Alpha, she's. The roar that tore from Damon's chest was not human. It was the sound of a king who had lost everything once and refused to lose it again. The sound of a wolf whose mate had been stolen. The sound of a monster unleashed. Every window in the ballroom exploded outward in a shower of crystal rain. Wolves dropped to the floor, hands over their ears, whimpering. The chandeliers swayed violently, some crashing down in cascades of shattered glass. The very foundations of the estate seemed to tremble. Damon shifted before his clothes finished tearing. The massive black wolf stood in the center of the ballroom, larger than any had seen him, eyes burning gold like twin suns. When he moved, wolves scattered. When he howled, the sound echoed across the entire territory, a summons and a promise of blood. Marcus shifted beside him, along with 20 others. The hunt was on. Outside, Cale smiled as he shoved a drugged Clara into the back of a van. He had planned this for months, the insider, the distraction, the timing. Everything perfect. He started the engine and headed for the abandoned warehouse district where his pack waited. Behind him, the city erupted with the sound of wolves on the hunt. Cale pressed the accelerator harder. Let the king come. Let him watch his precious human die slowly. Let him finally understand what it meant to lose everything. Damon did not think. Thinking was a human luxury, and he had abandoned his humanity the moment Clara's scent faded from his awareness. He was pure instinct now, pure rage, pure wolf running on 4 legs through city streets that blurred into background noise. Her scent. He followed her scent. Blood and fear and that vanilla sweetness that was uniquely hers, a trail that burned through the urban maze like a lit fuse. Cars swerved. People screamed. He did not care. Nothing existed except the hunt, except the imperative carved into his bones. Find her. Save her. Destroy anything that stands between. The warehouse district rose from the industrial wasteland like tombstones, and Clara's scent led him to the largest building, windows broken, door hanging open like a mouth. 20 wolves flanked him, his pack, his army, but when he reached the entrance, he held up a massive paw. This kill was his. He shifted back to human form just long enough to tear the door off its hinges with his bare hands, the metal shrieking. Then he was wolf again, flowing through the opening like liquid shadow. Inside, Cale waited. He stood in human form in the center of the vast empty space, Clara bound to a chair behind him, blood trickling from her temple. Her eyes were open, glazed with drugs but conscious enough to see him, to recognize him. "There he is," Cale said, grinning. "The great Alpha King, come to beg for scraps." Damon shifted back, rising to his full height, naked and covered in the sweat and grime of his run. His eyes burned gold, his voice a rumble that shook dust from the rafters. "Let her go. Or what? You'll kill me." Cale laughed. "You'll kill me anyway. But at least this way, I get to watch you suffer first." He pulled a knife, turning toward Clara. Damon did not give him the chance. He shifted mid-leap, his wolf form exploding forward with a speed that defied physics. He crashed into Cale before the blade could fall, jaws closing around the rogue's shoulder, teeth sinking deep. Bone cracked. Cale screamed. They tumbled across the concrete, a blur of fur and flesh and fury. Cale shifted beneath him, rust-colored wolf snapping at Damon's throat, but Damon was larger, stronger, a king fighting for his queen. He threw Cale across the warehouse, the rogue's body slamming into a support beam hard enough to dent the metal. The other rogues poured in from the shadows, 8 of them, snarling, desperate. Damon's pack met them at the doorway, and the warehouse became a killing floor. The sounds were primal, terrible, snarls and screams and the wet tearing of flesh. Damon stalked toward Cale, who struggled to rise, blood pouring from a dozen wounds. The rogue's eyes were wide now, feral with pain and fear. "You should have stayed in whatever hole you crawled from," Damon said, his voice barely recognizable, something between man and beast. "You should have known better than to touch what belongs to me." Cale lunged, a last desperate attack. Damon caught him by the throat, his claws piercing skin, and with a single violent twist, ended it. The warehouse went silent. Blood pooled across concrete. Bodies lay scattered, rogues who had bet against the king and lost. Damon stood in the center of the carnage, breathing hard, covered in evidence of his violence. Then he turned and saw Clara, still bound, staring at him with eyes that held something between horror and awe. He had saved her. But at what cost? The dawn came cold and gray, washing the Blackwood estate in pale light that made everything look fragile, temporary. Damon sat in his bedroom, bare-chested, while the pack healer stitched the worst of his wounds. Cale had gotten in a few good strikes before the end, and even an Alpha King could bleed. He had not seen Clara since they brought her home. Marcus had taken her to the guest suite, called a doctor to check her for injuries, sedated her so she could sleep off the drugs. 3 hours had passed, and Damon had spent every minute of them waiting for the inevitable. She would leave. Of course she would leave. She had seen what he truly was, had watched him tear through flesh and bone without hesitation, had witnessed the monster that lived beneath his skin. No human could accept that. His late wife had loved him before she knew, and even then, the knowledge had frightened her until the day she died. Clara would run. And he would let her, because keeping her here would be the cruelest thing he could do. The bedroom door opened. Clara stood in the doorway, wrapped in one of his shirts that fell to mid-thigh, her feet bare, her hair tangled. The bandage at her temple was stark white against her skin. She looked small, breakable, and utterly unafraid. "You should be resting," Damon said, his voice rough. "So should you." She walked toward him, and the healer wisely excused herself, slipping out the door with a knowing glance. Clara stopped before him, her eyes traveling over the claw marks across his ribs, the bruises darkening his skin. "Does it hurt?" "I've had worse." "That's not what I asked." Damon looked away. "Clara, you don't have to do this. I've arranged for a car. I'll set you up with enough money to start over anywhere you want. You'll be safe, I'll make sure." "I'm not leaving." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and perfect. "You saw what I am," Damon said quietly. "What I'm capable of. The violence, the blood. I saw you save me." Clara reached out, her fingers gentle against the worst of his wounds. I saw you tear apart the people who wanted to hurt me. I saw you fight like the world would end if you failed. Her hand moved to his face, cupping his jaw, forcing him to meet her eyes. I saw a king protecting his queen. Damon's breath caught. Clara. I'm not your late wife. I'm not going to break because you showed me the truth. I'm not going to run because loving you means accepting all of you, even the parts that scare me. Her thumb brushed his cheekbone. Especially those parts. The bedroom door burst open, and Leo ran in, still in his pajamas, tears streaming down his face. Daddy. Clara. I heard you were hurt. He saw them together and stopped, his lower lip trembling. Clara opened her arms, and Leo crashed into her, burying his face against her shoulder. I was so scared, he sobbed. I thought the bad man took you away forever. I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Clara looked at Damon over Leo's head, and something shifted in her expression. Something fierce and certain and irrevocable. I promise. Damon felt the bond surge between them, stronger than ever, and he knew with absolute certainty that she meant it. She was staying. She was his. They were hers. You don't want to borrow me anymore? He asked, his voice breaking on the words. Clara smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. No, she said. I'm keeping you. Leo cheered, throwing his arms around both of them, and for the first time since his wife died, Damon Blackwood let himself believe in forever. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more werewolf romance tales, alpha kings, rejected mates, and powerful Omega stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me create more content like this. Thank you for reading, and I'll see you in the next.